We will start the panel. We're just going to go one after the other. We'll get started with just the simple question, maybe not, but what inspired you to develop your idea and how you got started? So we'll start with Andrew.
Yeah. Hi, guys. So I came from a nonprofit background. I went to school for accounting. So if you don't know, I run a bookkeeping / accounting / tax firm in Cornwall. So my background is nonprofit. I worked at the community health center down on Pitt Street here for about 6 years. Worked my way up. I started off as a accounts payable clerk, started learning payroll, started learning HR, IT, building maintenance, sort of a jack of all trades, as you typically know with nonprofit. But the one thing I would say about nonprofit is for ambitious or passionate people, there is sort of a capacity of what you can do because of budgets, and that's not their fault. It's I've grown a lot professionally and personally there, and I've learned a lot. But I wanted something different. I wanted to be able to kind of build my own path, build my own destiny. So at the time, I was like having very little bookkeeping clients on the side. I think I had 2 or 3. I think Chantal was actually one of them at the time. And I kind of made the crazy decision with some support of friends and family to just quit my full-time job. And I didn't have much at that time financially with recurring revenue. So it was kind of a risky decision because I was having pension, benefits, vacation. It was pretty lucrative for someone in the Cornwall region with a college diploma. And then it was kind of just destiny from that point. It kind of just happened. But for me, it was really just wanting more out of my life, wanting to be able to decide how I live my life and kind of creating my own journey in that way. That was my little way of doing it. Yeah.
So I started Big Catch Communications 6 years ago now. After moving back to Cornwall after being away for almost 20 years. And for me, it was just a natural progression. I've always worked as a freelance writer, as a travel writer. I worked for En Route for a while. I worked for a lot of big brands across the country. But I always worked remotely. And when I moved back to Cornwall, it became obvious to me, or it became more apparent to me, that I wanted to work with people face to face and not just be having like teleconference type work and working within my community. I had a little girl at the time, and I really was sort of cocooning for the first time in my life. And so I started Big Catch as a one woman show, and then it kind of grew, and I've brought it back down to just myself again. So it's really been an evolution over the last 6 years.
Yeah.
That's apt, right?
It is.
Andrew helped me, has watched the ebb and flow of my company.
Yeah, it's been
over the last few years.
Yeah,
so.
for sure.
Me? My turn? All right. What inspired me was really my addiction to scent. So I love things that smell amazing, and even if they don't apply to, me, I will buy it if it smells awesome, and I'll figure out how I can use it. So that was what really, really motivated me to start something on my own. I was working in the service industry for almost 20 years as a bartender. The last bar I tended was right across the street at Schnitzel's. And I was starting to get a little bit cranky. And one of my friends said, my best friend, she said, Angela, maybe you should consider, something else if you're feeling like this. I was like, gosh, like what else am I going to do? Like this is the only thing I know really, really well. And then my husband said at the time, well, why don't you make something that you can use your essential oils in? Because I was making sense for everyone, yeah. And so he suggested soap. And I was like, I don't want to make soap. And he said, well, you can, he was really motivating, very supportive. So the first batch of soap we made was on our front porch. I was petrified because lye, sodium hydroxide, is highly explosive if not worked properly. And so I had this huge long spoon, and I was stirring the pot on my front porch, afraid it was going to blow up my front porch. It didn't. but that batch of soap was horrible. It was so hard. I used like an old school recipe with lard just to practice. And yeah, it was really bad. So I'm the type of person that if I don't get something 100% or very close right off the bat, I just look the other way. I'm not like that anymore, but I was. And so that just went in the cupboard. I didn't give any of that soap away because it was awful. And I just, figured I'll just keep bartending and I won't look at that. And I would say about 6 months later, I thought, geez, I really need to push through this. Like, I really need to prove to myself that A, I can do it or I can't, but I haven't even really tried yet. And so I did. I revisited it, and I worked really hard. A night in tips, I'd make $250, and that would buy my box of shea butter, organic shea butter. So I kept pushing slowly through that, and I'd give samples out to people. And when I got some great feedback, it really fueled me, and I started from there. So that's where I made the 10 bars that still exist today. And we're sold all over the world. Or some places all over the world. Yeah. So that's
cool.
My addiction to scent is really what started it off for me.
Hi, I'm Karine. It's funny because this idea of the collab is something that I tried to make happen 11 years ago under a different brand and a different name, and I just fell so hard on my face with it and learned so much in that experience that I had completely walked away from it. I had decided that I wasn't ready. I was really young, and I had tried to accomplish a lot of things really fast. Didn't realize that it was a sprint and not a race, and that I need to pace myself through that process. So in that time in between, I always worked for or with small business owners. So always working with people who work differently than in the corporate space. When Andrew was talking earlier about what that looks like, I was not built for it. Like, it was not good for me to be in such a regimented kind of workflow. So a little bit more creative and needing some flexibility. But I needed a break from that. So I actually spent 7 years working for my sister and my brother-in-law's business, and they have products they sell all around the world. But then after a period of time, I was just feeling like I needed to go and do my own thing again. And I didn't know what that would look like. So I quit this fantastic job that I had, great pay. They sent me all around the world. I traveled to trade shows and got to do some really cool stuff. And one day I was cutting vegetables at the kitchen island, and I'm just crying. My husband's like, "What is wrong?" I'm like, "I hate it. I just don't want to do this anymore." And it was just because my role was the nature of the business for my family was just evolving so fast that my role, and like Katie and Liv, who are here with the lab, like in small business, things pivot fast and hard often. So I felt like I could never bring anything to completion. I was being pushed into another direction with my role, and it wasn't fulfilling anymore. So I made the difficult decision to leave and just go work a summer at a coffee shop and try to figure that out. I had the opportunity, Chantal, to work with Chantal a little bit, and all of this kind of just brought me back to wanting to go back to strategy. I really enjoyed business strategy and talking with people about what they're doing in their business, how to evolve from it, and just making plans so that you can execute. But what I found and what inspired me to kind of start shifting was that when I would meet with a client and we would discuss a strategy and I'd be like, "Here's your plan, go do this," the face was like, "Well, now where do I go for this? Now what?" So all of these years later, the collab exists, not solely from my efforts, because the collab really was a collaboration of creatives and people who made it happen and brought all those things together. So the concept and the idea is not something that's new. It's not something that was out of the box, but it was just really a labor of love between people who just really want to help small business people with different things, strategy, marketing, and whatnot. So over the years, that has also evolved, and that's kind of shifted. But ultimately, I've almost 11, 12 years later, I'm just right back where I started, but a little bit smarter and a little bit, a little bit more wise in that process. And yeah, so we're here.
Thank you. I'm sure a lot of people in those things at the very beginning. Our next topic, if you can kind of, knowing that what you know now, as a successful business owner, is there anything that you would have done differently when you were first starting out?
Start with me. You know, in my industry, it's very, it's a very boring industry for all intents and purposes, right? Bookkeeping, taxes, snore, like you just want to fall asleep when you're listening to it. But it can be pretty intensive at times. And that intensity, at first, I think I bear too much of the responsibilities on my own shoulders. And I initially thought, when I started hiring people, I still had issues internally of delegating those responsibilities back to my team members, even though they were definitely competent and wanting to help out. It was really my internal struggle of being scared, right? Being scared of, well, what if they make a mistake and then it falls on me, and how do I fix that mistake? But I think I realized, I only realized in the last 2 years, I'd say, when I started hiring more people, is that those mistakes are good. Having my team make mistakes it's an opportunity for us to internally look at our processes and figure out how did that mistake happen in the first place, and how do we try to avoid that happening in the future. So like I would say for me, the sort of short answer is don't be afraid to delegate, right? If you start bringing on team members, it's okay, and you want it to feel good to say, yeah, this person can also help you out. Because my name's on the firm, right? Segment Financial, and that was really scary. When we were building the name initially from the get-go, I was really concerned that people would only want to work with me. And how do I make people and clients feel that they have access to a full firm, even though they might not be directly working with me? So be able to, use words like we instead of I. At the beginning, I would definitely say I, or me. But now, last few years, it's more of a team collaboration effort. So I'd say, the biggest thing to recommend is if you are bringing on team members or you have a team, you definitely have some team members who can definitely support you and help delegate some of your responsibilities.
Good one. That's a good one. For me, it was not listening to my gut or not following my gut. At the beginning, early on, it was just myself, and then I brought on one other team member. We worked super well together, and then as the business started kind of exploding and me feeling like I couldn't say no, or I didn't want to say no to people, I also started getting advice from business advisors who were amazing. And on initial meeting, they said to me, what kind of business do you want to have? And at the time, my child was still fairly young. I wanted to have what they deemed a lifestyle business. So something that made me money where I was working, but if I needed to, I could take off on a trip with my kid, or I could, bring her to the dentist. It got to the point where it was no longer a lifestyle business. And so I was growing, and they were giving me advice, and it was great advice, but I wasn't listening to, what I wanted. And so I grew this business way too quickly. I'll be totally honest, Andrew can attest to this because he was watching my finances. I kind of lost the reins completely. And I never got to the point, where I bankrupted myself, but I could have if I had kept going. I hit kind of a point where I was like, I'm not into this anymore. I need to pull back. I let go of a beautiful office and all the trappings of it. I brought it back down to myself. I was still collaborating with a lot of other people, but I no longer had the responsibility of like payroll and rent and all this stuff. And then COVID hit, and I had none of those things. And I just remember being so relieved that I didn't have that hanging over me, and that I had made that tough decision, because it's hard, right? You're working with all these amazing people, you're doing good work, you're kind of known in the community, and then you're like, I'm gonna throttle down. And some people are saying like, why are you doing that? And other people are saying to you, this is probably the best decision you could have made. And for me, it was. So for me, it was not listening to my gut and getting kind of swept up on this idea of like success means that you have to grow, when that's not everybody's definition, and it's certainly not mine.
Yeah, it's sorry, I just want to.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Because when I started my business, I was like, I'm going to build an empire. Like, I'm going to build like one of the largest bookkeeping firms in Ontario, and I had opportunities to do that. But then quickly, I started realizing this is not for me, and I don't have to fall into that forced ideology from the beginning of my business. Like, your business will evolve, and your mental perspective will evolve. And I was like, I don't want to drive to Ottawa or Kingston or Toronto to meet with a client. Like, that's not appealing to me. Like, appealing to me is like working from home, just relaxing, you know, kind of finding that balance, whatever that may be for anybody, which is whatever that now it is. But anyways, it's super interesting because I had that empire ideology initially, but now I'm trying to work on working with what we have without growing this large business, because just by having more revenue and more money, for some people that's not life,
We
right?
have to
So-
maintain it.
yeah, you have
that's
to
the other
maintain
thing.
it, right?
Yeah.
You're right. That's a good
More
point.
money, more problems.
More money, more
Yeah,
problems.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. All right, my turn again?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, definitely a little bit of, or a lot of what Andrew's saying, a lot of what Chantel's saying. I'm sure it's just gonna, keep going down. Gosh, there's so many things. When I first started Ground Soap, because I love so many products, I wanted to, after I established this awesome recipe for our bars, I wanted to come out with a ton of different products. Because I love products, so I wanted this, I want this, I want this, I want this. I have all the ingredients to make them. Why don't I just, go ahead and offer this huge lineup of things? And so it really bothered me in the beginning that I don't know, I was really conflicted. I wanted to, but it cost so much money. And I had already established all of these retail locations outside of town in Toronto. And so if I introduce a new product, then I have to pay for the design for all of these products. I have to pay for the packaging. I have to pay for the shipping. I have to, all of these things. And so as they say, we wear different hats all the time, and I was wearing, I had to put a lot of them on, and it was just, those are the things that conflicted me. I'm so going to be talking around in circles. So I guess in the beginning, I wish I would have known that focusing on one product that you're really, really good at is likely the way to go, because you're going to get, your customers are going to know you for doing something, making that product, and it's very awesome, and they can rely on it, and it gets a lot of great reviews, a lot of word of mouth, and so I wish I wouldn't have been so hard on myself in the beginning, because I wanted it to be big right away. My biggest, what I always told myself was, if I can work this hard for other people, working in their restaurants and working for nothing, essentially, I can work that hard for myself. And so I was determined to work that hard every day. And it burnt me out. I was, emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted. And it makes it really hard for you to focus on the things that are important when you're trying to do all of these things very quickly. And I guess I just wish I would have known that I can take it a little bit more slowly, and I don't have to be like every other company that's launching and have 10 different items. And so now we're starting to do that a little bit, because we can afford to do hire a graphic designer and have the stuff look awesome on the shelves compared to the other products and stuff like that. And so after 13 years, I finally have, the cash flow to be able to do that confidently and for all of the locations. So, yeah, I guess I wish I wouldn't have been so hard on myself in the beginning. Yeah.
I think, I'm going to add a little something to that, but I think it's just such a testament to what you see other businesses doing. Like, you think people are achieving certain things, or you see somebody changing direction or doing something, and you think to yourself, why? But you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And I make jokes all the time. People love coming in here and they talk about how lovely the space is and all this stuff. And yes, but it's a huge investment. It's I mean, I work with Andrew, so he knows, like, the last couple of years have been a lot of ups and downs of trying to figure out. We opened a co-working space in the middle of all this madness, and the reason I wanted to have this space was because I struggled really hard in the first 3 months of the pandemic of not being able to be out and about and with people. I thrive on community, and while we do a lot of really great work together, like, I don't do the physical work, like the team does the designing, the web, the copy, like all those things, like I don't actually have my hands in it as much anymore. And so the community aspect was really, really important to me. So to build that, I'm like a go big or go home kind of person. And that's, you know, I remember Andrew sitting in here and I was like, I think I just want to take the other side over. And he's like, let's look at the numbers. I'm like, but here's the thing. Here's how I think this could work. And he's like, let's look at the numbers. I'm like, yeah, but what if? And that is 100%, that's my nature. That will never change. I'm always kind of just a go-getter and try and pick yourself up again. But I think the testament and the acknowledgement in this discussion right now is that you're looking at people who, you know, social media is telling you one story, but there's all these things in the back end, and we have to make decisions that are right for us. So yes, having all this space in the time of where everything's kind of falling apart seemed ridiculous, but it saved me through this pandemic where I didn't have to be alone. I had a community of people and a team that I could be with, and we could, you know, work safely and still continue to do our thing. And now we're starting to reap the rewards of that. But very much in line with what they're saying. But the other last piece that I would say that I would do differently, and I did this time, but not years ago, was invest in somebody. And this is not to jump on Andrew and to be tooting his horn over there, but working with somebody right away to make sure that stuff stays in order. My husband and I have been entrepreneurs for, you know, working for ourselves for over 10 years. And there were periods where I didn't pay attention to that stuff and still am not great at it. He's like, oh, it's boring. I'm like, it's anxiety. Like, why does anybody want to look at any of this? Like, please don't tell me.
Right?
Just don't tell me.
That's why we need people like you.
But we need 100%. We need that. And 10 years ago, I didn't think that was necessary. I was like, I can figure it out, and I couldn't figure it out. That was a bad idea. And not that I got myself in any kind of a major pickle, but I didn't need to be unsuccessful in the process to know that, like, a lot of the decisions I was making were not clear. So being able to work with someone who handles all of the stuff that, especially the accounting stuff that is so important. And like I think we put a lot of weight on what it looks like online and on social media and what those things look. But at the end of the day, it's all the back end work and the numbers there. Like, are you making money? And not necessarily to be rich. Like, for the most part, when we have our businesses, we do it because we want to work for ourselves and do our own thing, not necessarily because we're trying to, like, you know, blow things up and make millions of dollars. Like, that can be part of the process, but that's not ultimately the goal of most small business owners and people starting out. You just want to have the flexibility of working for yourself, and to maintain that and to live in there and to be successful in that process. I think the thing that I should have done years ago was invest in working with somebody who can handle all those things, take it off my plate, and be like I got an email from Andrew the other day. He's like, we need to talk about some things, and I haven't responded yet because I'm like, oh yeah.
I'm not a bad guy, I swear.
But he sent me an email, and he's curious about what's going on. So we're having a discussion about what can we do differently so we can maybe save some money this way, or and for tax purposes, this is more ideal. And like, yeah, 10 years ago, I would have been like, I don't need that. It's fine. I'll figure it out. And you can't figure that stuff out later. You should be on top of those things.
I'm waiting for her to email back saying, boo, sooner or later. Like, it's going to happen.
I think the interesting thing about having like a finance person behind you, if you're not good at finance yourself, is, and Andrew has said this before, is he's not just like spitting out numbers back at you. What he's doing is telling a story about your business and telling you, you know, are you doing really well right now? Or do you need to tighten the reins a little bit? Can you invest in this? So it's a bigger picture than just like, here's your year-end financials, or here's your GST, you know.
You guys are too kind. You guys are like making me blush.
But it makes
so
a big
true.
difference
But it's
because
true.
I think
So true. Yeah.
for creatives, especially, like, I don't know.
Our heads aren't there.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
not what we're interested in, right?
No.
And some people are really good at it.
And what I-
Katie's laughing at the back
You know,
because today she was making a spreadsheet for us, and she's like, "Look," and I was like, "Oh, why would you do
So
that?"
beautiful.
Like, she's super, she's so excited about tidying that stuff
love
up,
it.
and I'm over here like, "Great, good job," because it is not. No,
I think,
not my
I think what
thing.
it comes down to is like, I know I'm really bad at social media and website and stuff like, and you have to kind of surround yourself with people who can support you. And I tell my clients, we are part of your team, and we not be on your payroll as an employee, but utilize us like we are part of your team. If you want to grow, use us as a resource to get there. And to Chantal's point, like the numbers at the end of the day, that's the end result. And they really do tell a large story at the end of the day for a business. And it's gotten to the point now I can look at a set of financials, and although there's a behind the scenes perspective to it, I can kind of understand the story that has occurred over the last few years, pre-COVID, during COVID, and sort of post-COVID, whatever we are in now. But it's a super interesting thing that I get to work with, and I'm very fortunate. We have so much power on our end. It's scary at sometimes that we try to build so much trust with our clients, our consumers, that often enough they rely on us for an answer, and that can be scary at times because sometimes we can say one thing and they would just blindly accept it and say, okay, that sounds right, I should do that. And it's great power comes great responsibility, and it's a true thing in our industry and in their industries as well, and it's not something I take lightly, because at the end of the day, the financial component can make or break a business from day one, and trying to support our clients as best as we can is something that's very dear to me and very important to me.
I remember doing a strategy session with someone, and I told my story a little bit, and like 2 weeks later she messaged me, she's like, "I quit my job, I'm doing the thing," and I was like, oh dear God. And then I'm telling my husband about it. He's like, "You shouldn't be telling people to quit their, like, are you telling people to quit their job?" And I was like, I didn't tell her to quit her job. Like, I don't know what happened. And immediately trying to get on the line. I'm like, "You sure this is the right decision? You really wanted this?" She's like, "Yes, I just need to." And anyway, you don't realize, like, in the moment you're talking about your experience and you're sharing things. But again, back to, I think what a lot of us are saying is, like, it's so individual, and there are so many different styles of businesses, and there's no wrong answer to what that looks like for you. And you need to lean into that and feel confident enough in that you can, like, drown out all the noise and forget what what everyone's telling you to be doing, because it has to be you. You have to decide, like Chantal said, you have to follow your gut and know what's right for you.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you're going to be right.
No,
Like,
no.
You will make mistakes.
There's no wrong answer. No, there's no wrong answer. You have to kind of, like, take the leap and do what you feel comfortable with. But you also have to accept that you are going to make major mistakes that you might not recover from, but it's, it's going to happen.
There are a lot of blind acts of
Absolutely.
Yeah.
6 months into the pandemic, when I was talking to Andrew about taking the other side, I'm like, how long could this really last?
Yeah.
And it's like a year and a half of nobody being on the other side, like an empty zone. I'm like, it's fine. We have fun Zoom rooms for us. Like, there's a lot of stuff you don't see, and it seems all perfect and easy, but there's a lot of hardworking people in the back end making those things happen, and ultimately that has to be you when you're working on your business and you're doing those things. Like, you're the one who has to hold all of that together. So.
So we kind of already touched base on this a little bit through the discussion, but can you tell us what challenges did you have to overcome at the beginning of your journey? So is there anything that really stood out of you that, oh, this is going to be a huge hurdle, or maybe you didn't realize it was a hurdle until it was already finished?
Mine's interesting, if you guys don't mind. So accounting and bookkeeping, it's still a current method, but the old method pre-COVID was like paper. A lot of paper shuffling around, checks, and I started my firm from day one being virtual and paperless. So in this region, all SDNG, Akwesasne, and Cornwall, I was the only bookkeeping firm and tax firm that was able to be completely paperless. And how we did that was use a lot of software and applications to get there. But in the beginning, when I started my business, because I started from the get-go like the right way, in my opinion. I rented an office, which is in the same space as Chantal, which is on 3rd Street here. And I rented an office, I had a website, and I had to market my business the way I thought made sense. But it was tough to breach this area specifically in my space because it was still in that old school mentality, and people were, change is tough for some people. I would say, as a business, when you're doing your books and your accounting, your taxes, you sort of rely on one or two people for a long time. It's a very relationship built business industry that we're in. So trying to penetrate this space saying, oh, there's a new way in doing bookkeeping and accounting. People are like, no, there's not. I don't want to do that way. So initially, we were taking on clients that really didn't fit our model. And, that was part of the process of having to figure out in the early stages, I don't need to accept every client in the early stages, even though it might make me money. In the long term, it might not help my business and my model because I'm going to have to let them go sooner or later and saying, listen, it's just not fitting anymore. And that's a tough conversation to have. So trying to penetrate this area, being the only business that was doing cloud-based bookkeeping definitely had its challenges. But the positive thing is that because I was the only one, it picked up super quickly. And I'm fortunate enough, I have 7 full-time staff right now over the last 4.5 years. And that came with its own separate challenges, which I'll probably talk about soon. But we were able to sort of dominate a market that didn't exist in the area. And that just escalated us to a different level very quickly. So that was fun.
For me, I think it was trying to be all things to all people. And I love learning everything and doing everything and not wanting to say no to anyone. And so I found myself, towards the end, before I throttled back and realized that I wasn't having fun anymore. I was doing everything from social media to video to campaign communications to, at that point, I was also doing the magazine. And it just became so unwieldy and not fun, really. And it was actually Karine at one point who had said, but what do you actually want to be doing? Like, sit down and think about the things that bring you joy. It's kind of like a Marie Kondo moment, right? Like, to figure out what are those things. And that's what I did. But trying to please everyone and do everything, for me, was the biggest challenge, for sure. Kind of like what you were saying, Angela, about trying to come out with so many products and then realizing, like, no, that's not what I want to be doing. Yeah,
for sure. For us, we wanted to grow huge, and I figured if I can make the best soap in the world, then everyone's going to want it. And so that's kind of what motivated me to keep pushing, is that I want everyone in the world to try the soap. But so we ended up getting a large franchise. It was 149 stores at that time. We ended up getting their contract. And so for 2 years, we supplied soap to 149 locations. It was a lot of soap, like thousands and thousands of bars of soap. And it was great. Like, our checks were like $20,000 an order. But that also put us very close to no money, because in order to manufacture that amount of product, you also have to really have other companies that you're manufacturing product for, because at that level, your capacity has grown to support production on that level. And so if you only have that one company, we have other little small companies, but I'm talking about, in order to manufacture that amount of soap, we had to get big tank systems. We had to get a bigger place. We had to hire people. We had, it just cost so much money. We had to have custom labels because it was in the US, and it's different when you sell product in the US. We had to increase our insurance. We were buying larger, now we buy all of our ingredients in huge drums. And so, for example, big, huge drum of olive oil, of organic, extra virgin olive oil. I just bought a drum yesterday, $1,600. So yeah, and so you have to have those ingredients in order to make the soap, and you have to have your clients pay you right away in order for you to buy the next huge lot of ingredients you need to make for them. And so it was really, really tight. It was so tight for us. And I would be we didn't even have good cell reception at the shop. So I'd be out in the parking lot in the blizzard, like trying to politely ask someone to please send me my money. Like, I cannot buy your stuff. I cannot fill your next order unless you send me that 20 G's right now. And I know I'm one of the small fish on your list. I remember the accounts payable saying to me, like, you are one of the top 10 on our list to pay because you're a smaller business. We have, like, I was net 30. They wanted me to give them 90 days before they paid me. I was like, I'm sorry, we can't float that. And so our biggest challenge was to get other clients that large in order for us to maintain that capacity, to use our space to the fullest, to the most that we could. And so, we don't have that franchise anymore. We're supplied to that franchise anymore. It was called Earthbound Trading Company. It's a really awesome bohemian kind of funky store where a product, looked amazing. But at that time, they needed display units for each of the locations. So because they're so huge, because they're paying us so much money, we made all of these display units for free for them. And so our entire shop was like display units, like honestly, like rows and rows and rows of them, and we were painting them, and like it was a lot of investment just in order to maintain these places. My husband at the time was a touring sound engineer, and so in all the different spots he'd be in the US, if there was an Earthbound in that area, he'd go and check it out, see how the product was displayed, and it wasn't. It looked like crap. The kids in there, they were university students. They really didn't care about somebody's product from Cornwall being merchandised properly on the shelves. And so that was really hard for me because I'm such a perfectionist, and I was so happy and proud to be in there. And all of a sudden, I think one of my regular customers from Schnitzels said, "Oh, I was in Florida and I saw your product," and she took a picture of it, and there wasn't even a label on one of the bars. Like somebody had ripped it off, and they like opened the fabric to look at the soap, and I was just mortified because he worked so hard and it's displayed horribly or whatever. So that was also another issue, was not having our packaging was not really working out great, because although I wanted to package it in something that you could smell the product through but not have fingerprints on a naked bar, which grosses me out. People weren't doing what I wanted them to do. They weren't smelling the product through the bar. They wanted to see it. They wanted to whatever. And so that was really frustrating because I couldn't afford to change. I couldn't afford to, spend $15,000 on getting all these boxes made. Now that's in the process of happening. And I will have to pull back on the material stuff, but it was just that growth. We wanted to grow so big, and how can you turn down a huge contract like that? And it was so hard because we were working so much to fill those orders, and our other orders in Canada and in France, where we still have distribution, that you can't. I couldn't go out and get another 150 stores like that in order to make sure that everything was covered. That was a huge challenge, and it still is. It still is tough because we're plugging away there at the shop, and I can only get out so often to do sales because we handle all of our own distribution in Canada and in the US. So that was the biggest one for us, I think, for sure. Sorry if I went on too long there.
No, it's great.
That's great, yeah.
I feel like I identify with all of these challenges.
Yeah.
I think it's just so important to be selfish in what you need through the process of everything, because the challenges that come up, I think they're often we did it to ourselves. So I know that a lot of the things that have challenged me over the last few years, they're all things that you let, and it's funny because from my role as a strategist was always to like tell you to not listen to the things. Like you're going to hear people tell you, you should do things this way or that way. And I know when clients tell me, like people are telling me all the time, for example, like you should be doing these types of soaps. And I'm like, my question is always like, how many people? Like one person told you this and now you think it's all the people? Or like really dissecting that, because we're taking this information, we start to believe that like it's a truth. Like I'm talking to all these people and they want all these things from me. I have to do all of that. So I think you have to stay very strong on your goal, and that's very, very difficult when you're presented with opportunities with large chunks of money where you're thinking, okay, well I'll make this. And then where can that go? I know my sister and my brother-in-law, again, they manufacture product. And when the first time we got into Shoppers Drug Mart, we were like, this is it. Like, this is a big deal. And then found out to get on the shelves, to be able to make that happen, to contribute to their point system and all that, it was going to cost $500,000 just to get on the shelf.
Yeah, because you have to pay for your own promotion.
You have to pay to play.
Yeah, if you want to be on an end cap in a store, for example, then you have to pay for that.
Or at eye level, and there's like all these things, you have no idea. So I learned a lot there in that process, and luckily for them, they're manufacturing the kind, they're there, like they're in Shoppers still today, and one of their products is on the bottom shelf paying a little bit less, and one is like right here because they want people to see it. But there's all these challenges and these things, I think, that growth part. And I think for me, it's like when we're thinking of growing, when we're thinking of doing more, the challenge is always to sit back and say, okay, yes, we want to be able to do these things, but does it make sense for us right now? And oftentimes I've kind of jumped into things thinking like it'll be fine and it'll work out. But I think digging yourself out of these situations is a lot harder than just sitting back and really identifying. You wouldn't have learned from that experience if you wouldn't have done that. Yeah. But now you know better, and you're probably not, now that you don't want to be producing for 300 stores on a regular basis. It's not, it's not how you want to live your life. It's a lot of work. Yeah. And we made jokes earlier, more money, more problems, and it's exactly it. The bigger you get, the harder it is. My husband runs a small construction company, and we have 3 guys. Well, he's one of the 3. So there are 2 guys. And people are always, he's a framer, and people are always asking, like, just grow your crew, get a bigger crew. And it's like, no, like I'm going to make the same amount of money growing because I'm not going to have to manage all these guys. Yeah. So I would rather be on the job, swinging a hammer, playing my music, putting the roof up, than having, a slew of guys who are doing things and you're chasing and you're going to jobs. And I think that was my biggest challenge in the process of growing the lab, was learning that to have a team and to work with freelancers and to work with other people, I had to be no longer involved in the work. Like I couldn't be involved in the creative stuff. I had to remove myself, and it took a little time to get there. And I think I'm getting there, but I think it always comes back to being true to yourself and removing yourself from all the noise and what everyone's telling you to do, I know it sounds cliche, but what society's telling you to do, what you think you're seeing on social media, what you think people are doing. Again, you walk in here and you're like, oh, look at all these things. It's like, yeah, but there's a lot of grunt that happens. Costs a lot of money to be here. So we have to make sure we're selling, to make sure that there's a lot of stuff that compounds with that. So if that doesn't align with what your goals are or where you want to be, or like Chantal said, she wasn't happy anymore. Like if you're not finding joy in your work, it's one thing when you're doing it for somebody else. It's a whole other when you don't find joy in the work that like you put yourself in that position. So it's like, oh, you really need to do that. So I think the challenges don't stop. I think they keep coming, and you're always, but I think if you can take that break and be like, okay, what's working for me? What's not working for me? Was it grandma that said I should do this? Or was it really actually everyone that said I should be doing this? I think those conversations with yourself are super important.
I think Karine brought up a good point too, is sometimes when you grow that big, you remove yourself from the very reason that you got into business. Mm-hmm. And some people are very good at going into that kind of management role, and some people aren't. And so for me, it was like, well, I don't get to do the fun stuff anymore because I'm too busy trying to like do payroll and like call Andrew every 2 seconds, or
Hey, what's wrong with that?
Well, like I want to get down and dirty. I want to be the one talking to the client. I want to be figuring out the creative campaign for them. I want to be doing the work. And if I'm a manager, then I'm not doing that anymore. And so again, it all comes down to like be true to yourself and know what it is you want to be doing.
And knowing what that like limit is, because I found myself enjoying the process of managing and community building and all that stuff. And that's because I'm organized in my own way, but like, I keep pointing at the back because the girls are back there, but like they know their craft really well. They do it really well. I did it for a period of time when we were, the collab was coming to life, or even years ago, but I thrive in building relationships and community building and all that kind of stuff and community doesn't mean like community as a whole. Like we have a little community of people that come and work here every week. Like I love being able to have the time to sit with them and chat and hear about their business. And I can't do that if I have to be doing the creative work. And I don't, as much as I can get away with doing some of the basic stuff, I don't have to be in the thick of that because there are people that are doing that really, really well. So when you're looking at what that looks like, so what I was trying to get at is the management part of it. When you're managing the people out, there was a time where I was like, we can grow our team. We could have all kinds of people doing the things. And I quickly realized, actually, no, like I want to be managing the team, but I don't want it to be a team of 20 people or 15 people or even 10 people. Like I want a small group that if on a Wednesday we're like, we're shutting it down, we're going for lunch, or you know what, we're going to go to our hub in Kingston and we can shut this down, and like, or one person can be here, it could be quiet. Like we wanted that flexibility, and I can't do that if we are, even arguably like with Andrew, he's growing his team quite a bit. Like that's a lot of people to me, and already that, if you would have asked me a few years ago, I'd been like, yeah, totally what we want. And that's really, really shifted too. It's like, I want a tight and close team that I can work well with and we can have fun. I want to have fun when I come to work every day. And that becomes very difficult when you put the weight of the world on your shoulders with all these commitments.
And you're right. One of the biggest things is realizing what your strengths and weaknesses are, and not trying to do it all, and being okay to, allow other people to do it. And that's really hard. I mean, I think we're all perfectionists here, and it is really difficult to let a portion of your baby, out to somebody else to deal with, and not to micromanage them, and not to, it's tough. It's really tough.
I remember the first time the team was launching a website and I hadn't even seen like anything. Like they're like, we're going live with this today. And I was like, are we sure it's ready? Like I hadn't seen the last process. And then next thing you know, it's live and the client's sending, these emails back and they're like, we're so happy with this and that. I was like, oh wow, it actually works. And having these systems in place and the right people, like, cool. Thanks, team. Like we made it happen, but it's such a rewarding feeling to know that you don't have to do everything alone. And that doesn't always have to be staff. That can be just having colleagues or, peers that you can talk to, or support from other businesses who do the thing better than you do, and allowing for that in your budget. And when people say like, oh, I can't spend the money on that, I can't do that, then talk to Andrew. You're probably not charging enough somewhere to make sense of all these things you're going to need, because you might not need them today, but you're going to need them one day. And so your initial rates, or the way you kind of show up to the world, are not going to sustain themselves if you want to grow, or if you need that support. So there's a lot of pieces to consider.
And truly no shame in asking if you don't know, really. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned, is that I didn't just wake up and be like, yeah, I can do it all. I'm the perfect entrepreneur. And no, you really do. You're constantly learning. You're constantly disappointed in yourself. It's a big melange of like all of the emotions every day, and it really is a roller coaster. Those words are so annoying now, like pivot, roller coaster, all of these things, but it's true. And and it's overwhelming sometimes, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is not all rainbows and unicorns, I'd say.
We're really inspiring, aren't we?
I'm not ashamed to say, like, when COVID hit, I cried for my clients a few times. I was mentally breaking down, and it was scary. It was a scary time where our business thrives on our clients' success, right? It's we're as much as part of their journey as much as they are as part of ours. So it goes hand in hand. And it was definitely scary when COVID hit, knowing that, some of my clients might have to shut down, and that's, it's a tough burden to bear. And that's tough on me. I couldn't imagine what they're mentally and emotionally going through over the last 2 years. And we just did what we could to help support them as much as we can. Like, our job is as much as being a cheerleader than it is being a truth teller, right? It's like there's a balance having to do both, where you need to provide negative advice as like, negative feedback on their business when it's required, but you don't want to be breaking them down when they're already, feeling small to begin with. Being an entrepreneur is, you have some amazing moments, like getting that client, quoting that client and succeeding is like a really good high. You feel amazing, top of the world. And sometimes you're so stressed out because a client is frustrated with some weird thing, and you're like, and it's sometimes you feel personally attacked, and it can be very difficult. It can go both ways, and every day is different depending on what's happening. You can wake up to a certain email, a phone call, and that can completely change what you do that day.
Yeah, that was for me this morning. Great, an awesome email. Yeah.
So,
Me, it's when Andrew sends an email
yeah.
at 7:00 in the morning.
Yeah, so I like to work late personally. Sometimes I work until 1:30 in the morning, depending on it's peaceful, it's quiet. I can just listen to music, just get my work done. But I like waking up to emails. It's a fun little ritual for me. I have a coffee and I get my emails done. So what I'll do is I'll schedule my emails first thing 8 in the morning. So it's nice because it's like, oh wow, he's like, he's on the ball. I'm like, oh, I'm not on the ball. I'm just like, this is my own little it's my own format.
Meanwhile,
But,
he's sending me out with like a vibration all day. I'm like, their way to start the day.
Because I don't like emailing at 5 or 6 p.m. I think it's a bit rude because I work with other entrepreneurs, and the worst feeling is you get an email at 5 or 6. You're eating like, I gotta deal with this. And it's like, no, I never want to put anybody in that situation where they have to deal with an email. In our industry, I don't believe in accounting emergencies. Like if it's an emergency, you knew about it weeks ago, right? So I don't want to have that feeling. I don't want to give that feeling to anybody else. So at least first in the morning, they can wake up, deal with it then, and not have to finish their dinner and stress about answering back to me. But yeah, I know.
I feel like noon isn't appropriate.
Yeah.
Let me have my coffee,
Yeah,
please,
yeah,
Andrew.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I should think about that.
Or 10.
I'll do a survey.
This will be the last question. So, and then if everyone has some questions, if we don't get time to complete them or ask them today, then please jot them down and email me. And this one hopefully is a fun one for you guys. So what is the best part about being an entrepreneur? What's the best part about starting a company?
Karine, you can start this one. Start on that side. Let me breathe a little bit.
Dear gosh. The best part. I think in the specific work that we do, similar to Andrew, like we feel like we're an extension of the team to a lot of our clients. So their wins are also our wins. The joy that we experience from seeing someone kind of launching something and starting something, that, I don't know, it just brings a lot of joy to us. And while I think a lot of people associate entrepreneurship with like flexibility, and there's like that meme or that joke that's like, I quit my 9 to 5 to work 24/7. And the reality is that it does weigh on you all the time. It's your baby, it's your life. Ask again the girls at the back. I'm like, there's the things that I'm thinking about are just like to the point of obnoxious. It's like, why is she worrying about these little things? But these are the things that keep me up at night. I want to make sure the room, like this morning, I knew you guys were all coming in today. So how are we going to make sure that this room works? And all these things, you're always on, you're always thinking, and you're always doing that. And it sounds like you think you're going to have all this flexibility, but you don't, but you actually get to do work that you love every day if you do it right. And when I speak to small business owners who are stressed or overwhelmed, or that's part of the process, but it shouldn't be the majority and the norm. You shouldn't feel like that every day. That shouldn't be it. We have stressful days here. We have deadlines, things happen, and some days are heavier than others. But 90% of the time when we're here, we're having fun, we're playing our music, we're doing our work, we're meeting people, we're getting to travel, we have clients in different places across North America. And that's not like, we don't have a whole slew of them, but getting to talk to a client in New York City about what's going on in their business or in California. And we're learning from them because their worlds are so different than ours. So our work just allows us to just be connected with people just all over the place, and we have fun with it. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you're starting this right now and you're already feeling heavy and stressed about it, then there's something missing. There's something that you have to make a change with, and there's something that you need to reassess before I think you leap all in, because 13 years later, like, you're still doing the thing. You have to love it. You have to want to do it, because otherwise you'll never make it to that point.
So am I next, or are we going the other way?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. As a creative, as somebody that, would rather just be making stuff and not have to worry about the business side of things, getting feedback from a customer. I get emails from customers that are not placing orders, just an email to tell me how much they love the soap, or just to say hi. I write a thank you letter, a handwritten thank you note on every single one of the orders. And that makes me so happy every day, because I'm connecting with them. They're not coming into the shop. It is nice to visit, but a lot of the customers that come and visit think it's a tour, and then they stay there for an hour and they don't realize that the hour we just spent together, I have to add onto my day. So instead of leaving at 4, I have to come back, and I'm not going to work an hour. I'm going to work 3 hours. And so, yeah, that's frustrating. But to get back to what I love is I love my customer feedback. I love that I made something all by myself, and created the packaging, and I had this dream. I made it come to life, and I'm still getting feedback and people that love it, and people that share it and tell me these incredible stories of these journeys that they went on, and they had to bring their favorite soap, and now the 12 ladies that they did this huge hike with are all using this one kind of soap because they discovered it there. Or I was in a spin class, and a lady said to me, are you the ground soap? And I said yes, or the soap lady, which I hate being referred to as.
The soap lady.
Yeah.
It's a great name.
And I was like, yes. And she said, I just want you to know that I'm a teacher, and when I come home from school, I always have a shower, and I grab that bar of Om, which is our patchouli bar, and I just hold it in the shower, and I just smell it. And I'm just
That's
like,
amazing.
oh God. So I hear stories like that so
so
often.
cool.
And because I suck at social media, I don't post them. And Karine, I don't know how many times I've had a conversation with Karine. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do social media. I'm like 40, I'm going to be 49 soon. So I think Facebook existed for 2 years before I started Ground Soap. And so I'm working. I'm not thinking about posts. I'd be like, oh shit, I should have taken that. I should have taken a picture of that. Now I can't do it. But I would have a little chat with Karine, and I would do a couple of posts, and I get a great message from her. Good, way to go. Keep doing that. I'd be like, yeah, I got my high five. Now I'm just going to go back into my little cave. And my stepson is constantly on me to post. I'm like, I can't. I've a database full of postable things and just can't execute. But yeah, what I love is still making the product, smelling the smells, getting feedback from my customers, and that's truly what keeps me pushing. Is like, if I stop this, they're gonna be mad at me.
Can I share something with you?
Sure.
Just emotional opening, because I didn't see you before I saw your product. And one of my friends, Rachel, she gifted me 2, and then of course I get elected after. But when I took one, I smelled it, and then I called one of my friends in Dubai, and I told her, this is your smell. It's so beautiful. There is some kind of human touch in it. And the bag, my bag that I put this, it was for maybe a week. And I was already using it, but the bag itself felt the same.
Wow.
And it's just so beautiful to the limit when you hug the people. You're like, oh, you're using the same soap. Because it stays with you, and it makes this connection, I guess, in a very weird sense. It makes me think about this novel called The Perfume, and but you use it in a very, very nice way. So.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Thank you so much.
No
See, it's those things. Yeah.
You did that.
That's really sweet. Thank you so much. Actually, I want to add one more thing. My accountant, I tried to get in with Andrew, but he's jammed. My accountant, she loves it when I give her the stuff every month because she's like, my whole kitchen just smells. She just started working from her home. My whole kitchen just smells like your soap, and like my papers or my bank deposit book smells like soap from the shop.
That's a great perk.
Yeah.
That's a great perk. See, I have clients like that too. They'll take my financial reports in the shower and be like, "Oh, this is amazing. This is so nice," and they'll smell it and be like, "Yeah." No, that would be something.
Oh my God.
Wow, Adrian, you're so awesome.
Said no one ever.
Said no one ever.
Nope.
For me, I think it's kind of the same thing. It's about community and connection. And because most of my work is in communications and in publishing, I spend all my time learning these incredible stories of people who are in our community doing incredible things. So like, as an example, yesterday, somebody we wrote about in the last issue of Perch, who designed and hand-built a 30-ton steel boat out near Chesterville, put it in the water in Kingston yesterday, and they're starting on this journey where they're living on their boat full-time. And it's like things like that. I'm like, oh my God, I got to be a small part of that. Just by writing the story and kind of bringing more attention to it. And for small businesses, we've gotten the emails where people are like, thank you so much about writing about my business, because for them, that's being in a small, even though we're a small magazine, it gets their name out there. And that's super fulfilling for me.
Mm-hmm. There's an article that was published in Purge for my hairstylist when Mark's article was in the thing, and he ended up getting all these discounted, like he became a professional because he was published. So this gave him like all these perks of getting product for a lesser discount, or he's being featured in all these things. So all these little things that happen, I think are just, those things mean a lot more than I think a lot of the big things that we're trying to attain when we start a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say for me, I was definitely a bit of an introvert when before I started my business, and I know it sounds funny like for how long Chantal's known me, but there's something about running a business and getting to collaborate and speak with other business owners and entrepreneurs is the best thing in the world. Like meeting Chantal for the first time was like one of the like best experiences at the beginning. And can I say it? Can I tell a story?
Sure.
I
don't remember.
First time meeting her, she had space on.
I had like a hole in the wall at 44 Pitt Street. It was above Axis, and it was literally about this wide and 20 feet deep.
Yeah, and I remember meeting her, and no shame, but she was like pretty much crying because of how she thought she had to do bookkeeping, because she was told from one of the professors at the college that you need to do your books in this long ledger book and you have to write everything by hand. And I was like, no, like don't worry about it. Like, and like I felt that stress completely being relieved and off her shoulders. And there, when you get to collaborate with business owners, it's the best experience ever, because you get so many different personalities and you get to like eat different foods and buy different products, and you start almost buying off each other, and it's a fun thing where you're helping support each other. I never, if someone asks me to, like, if someone wants to give me a discount, I never have a discount because I always want to treat them like a normal consumer. But it's so awesome getting to see people down the street or walk into someone's store and like, yeah, we know each other, and get to collaborate and work with each other. It's Cornwall in the area is a magical place. Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited on an entrepreneur level to see what happens next. We've had the last 2 years, obviously been a lot of turmoil, but like we had a huge, like right before COVID, we were like killing it in the area. We were doing some awesome, cool things, and I can't wait to see what happens next and getting to experience that as a citizen of the area, but as an entrepreneur is like, for me, it's like a gold mine. It's a magical thing.
I would like to add, you just mentioned something about this being a really awesome place to work out of. A couple of years ago, our distributor from France came to Canada for the first time, and she came here to visit. And we took her to Ottawa, of course, and all these great places. But I called Bob Peters for economic development, and I said, hey, our distributor is going to be here. just thought I'd let you know, whatever. We had a little chat about it. I had booked dinner for us at Truffles, and for Melanie, myself, and my husband. And when we got there, Bob had this beautiful package of like a really nice fleece that said Cornwall on it. Just a bunch of really awesome Cornwall things. And she was so impressed. She said this would never happen in her community. And she wears that fleece every morning when she goes for her bicycle ride. She lives in Versailles. And and she said they would never do that. They would never put a sign on our road telling us, like Pure Organic Spa has a sign on the highway. They would never do anything like that for us. And so I just hope that, you all here take a little piece of that with you and know that this community is so amazing to support local small businesses. And honest to God, I would not still be plugging through it if I didn't have support from economic development, some of my awesome mentors like Noella Cottenham that owns Sign It, and all of these people, because there were so many days where I was just like, I am done. And I'd, drive up to see Noella, and she would give me, a half-hour pep talk, and I would drive back to Cornwall with the tunes cranked. I'm like, yeah, I got it. I'm like, I'm doing it, shifting my gears. But yeah, you really need those other people here to, like, it's okay. I've gone through it too. And you just, keep pushing through. And yeah, I really love living here, and I love the support that all of the, locals and my friends give me. Yeah.
I think to Angela's point about, there are awesome people here, and sometimes you just have to ask for help, and go see the person who you think you can help you. And entrepreneurs are, I think, notorious for understanding the pain that you're going through because they've probably been through it themselves, So there's no shame in it. I used to not want to tell people, I'm really struggling right now, and now I'll tell anyone, I'm having a bad day, or, show up on Angela's doorstep and be like, I just really need a chat. I'm going to take an hour of your time so you can work another hour at the end.
But you know what? Then it's worth it because it's just full circle, And when you have a support system like that, it does fuel you. It's really the only thing that can fuel you. I mean, sometimes you don't have money in the bank, but you need you need someone to. Actually, when I first started, somebody said to me, what did he say? When I started off, I would lie in bed at night thinking, oh God, I hope that check I wrote doesn't bounce today, because when I wrote it, there was nothing in the bank. And I was like, oh my gosh, really? And I never would have thought that about him and his business. I mean, he was doing so well, and he was doing well, but there are really tight times. And that little thing that he said to me when I was just starting, and I didn't even really have financial issues. I was literally just receiving $70, checks for soap that I had made. That really stuck with me. It still sticks with me, and I'm really thankful that he was humble enough to tell me that, because it really helped me a lot when I was having crappy days. Yeah. That's that.
Actually, I remember the first time I got injured, I actually got audited by the government for $20,000. They audited me for 5 years. And to be honest, if they would have been right, I would have been closing the doors. Not only did Andrew find out that I didn't owe the government $20,000, he actually found me $7,000 for those 5 years. So I kind of joked, okay, he's my income tax guy.
Wow.
Knowing what I know and then knowing what I don't know is where I'm at. I need to learn what I don't know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you don't know that until you're in it. And then you're like, oh, I really don't have any idea.
And I think realizing and saying out loud, I don't know this. And that's okay. I tell clients all the time, there is no stupid or dumb or silly question. Any question you have is a good question, right? It's there's an opportunity for discussion, and it will always come with something out of it no matter what. So in your situation, it's I've realized I really suck at very specific things, and I know I need help in those areas. I seek help, and there's no shame in that, right? It's that makes me, in my opinion, a better entrepreneur, a better business owner, because I would tell the same thing to my clients. If you suck at marketing, or you suck at finances, whatever. Like that's what we're here for. So it'd be really silly for me to not do what I preach, right? So